All right, it's the next day. I've sprayed with Kamar and UV spray, a couple coats of Kamar and then a couple coats of UV spray, and I've allowed a day for the gases to dissipate while it's sitting. The other thing that I did before I did that is I took a small brush, just a little small brush with some isopropyl alcohol. I had drips down the side and that's totally fine. I wanted them, but I wanted them a little bit more subtle. So I took some isopropyl alcohol and just blended my stripes in a little bit before spraying it with the sprays. So now I'm ready to mix my resin. I have a cup here that's got measurements on the side, which is going to make it very easy to measure. I'm using Moss Epoxy's resin, and there's two parts to it. There's a part A and a part B, and you use equal parts of each. So I am going to do that. I mix it for 3 minutes, making sure to scrape the sides as well as the bottom. The other things is make sure that you follow the safety protocol from the resin that you are choosing to use. That information will typically be with the product or on their website. So I'll be back once I have my resin all mixed. All right, my resin is mixed and we are ready to go. Before you do anything, make sure you take a level and make sure that your piece is completely level, because if it's not, the resin will flow to the lowest point. So best to do that ahead of time. If by chance it's not level, I typically will put like a toothpick or something underneath my painter's pyramid in order to raise it up a little bit. So my resin has been mixed for 3 minutes, and typically it's quite easy to see that it's mixed thoroughly. While you're mixing it, you'll see the two parts. You'll see the striations in the resin, and then all of a sudden it becomes pretty clear. There is bubbles in it, and it tends to happen even more when the resin is thick, but we're going to use a heat gun to pop those bubbles. So I'm covering the surface completely. And then using my gloved hand to spread it all the way to the edges. And I like mine flowing over the edges, so I'll spread it all the way to the edges. And then I will also take that hand with the resin on it and I will rub it all over the edges. And what that does is it ensures that it's going to run over the edges a little bit more evenly. And typically what I do when I'm using resin is I'll have a mold or two to the side. So if by chance I have a little bit extra, I'll just pour it into the mold, do some experimenting on it, and typically that's the way to not waste it. I think sometimes you learn something about the resin that you're using. Great way to play with it, using up extras for little experiments. All right, so make sure we've got resin around all 4 sides, and I've clearly moved it around on the painter's pyramids while doing that. And then make sure that you're completely covered on the front. All right, taking one glove off to touch my heat gun, and I'm using a low setting, going all over it, and you can just watch the bubbles pop. And you're gonna do this until you stop seeing bubbles popping. And then usually for the next half an hour to an hour, I'll go back to it every 10 minutes or so, because typically some more bubbles will have risen to the surface and I will pop them. If you need to protect it from dust and stuff like that in the air, because resin tends to attract it, you can put a clear container over top of it so that you can still watch it, but it's protected. And I typically will do that if it's the last coat that I am putting on my piece. Typically, if I have other levels or other resin layers that I'm plan on adding, I don't really protect it too much because I have easier access this way. All right, so all the bubbles are popped. There's a little thing in there, and I'm going to take a toothpick in a minute and pick that out. And yeah, so I'll see you tomorrow, and we will mask for our second layer. While I remember, while it's on my mind, one thing that I mentioned with spraying the Kamar and the UV spray on the resin is that you need to wait 24 hours for it to dissipate. Otherwise, the gases coming from the sprays tend to result in fish eyes. The way to fix it, if you happen to get them, because sometimes you'll still get them after 24 hours, is to add another coat of resin. That should fix the problem.